Most high performers, most people treat their mind like a stressed employee. The moment something goes bad, the moment procrastination sneaks in, the moment negativity sneaks in, we come down like a ton of bricks, we punish it, we try to solve the problem with force. Now, the problem with this is that our mind, just like an employee, will rebel if it starts to get treated like this. It will start to get anxious, it will start to feel shame, it will start to feel fear, it will start to maybe even actively self-sabotage whatever we're doing the same way that a person would, and the same way that, quite frankly, if someone was to treat us that way, we would also respond. Because when you push on something, most likely, especially if it's a person, especially if it's a mind or an ego, that thing will push back. So we don't have to fire our mind every single time something goes wrong. Instead, what we have to do is change the way we manage it. If we change leadership, everything else comes into place. We need to make sure that we are using our mind so that we're not just winning short term, but we're also winning long term. Short term because we need to make sure that we're producing the results here and now, but also long term because on a long time horizon, we don't just want the mind to be unaffected. We don't want it just to be neutral. We actually want it to be improving over time. We want it to get more relaxed, more pliable, because with these conditions, it gets more creative. It gets more hardworking. There's more inspiration. There's more drive. There's more intrinsic motivation. Okay. Now we can treat our mind in a way where we get short-term results fast, and long-term we suffer because we get more stressed. We get more hard on ourselves. We just get into more negative loops. And the more negative loops we get into, the more we reinforce it. Or we can treat it in a way where we do get short-term results still, but we're actually building a more resilient, more pliable, more creative mind as we move forward. Now, part of the reason I'm making this video is that there's a lot of good creators out there, but there's also a lot of misinformed advice, in my opinion. And when that advice comes to be misinformed, and what I mean by misinformed advice, I mean that there's a lot of mindfulness advice out there which teaches subtly or not so subtly to detach from the mind or disown the mind completely. The problem with this is that a lot of the people that I work with, and also in my own journey and my own work too, I have to use the mind. I have to use it in an analytical way, in a critical way, in a problem-solving way. All of these ways we can't just disown. We can't just try and step around it. We have to engage with that problem, but to use it better. Remember the analogy around management and leadership? That's the direction that we have to go. We can't just fire our mind or start a different company. So an example, perfect example for this is one of my clients, we'll call him Andrew, is a software engineer. And if you know anything about software engineers, this is a technical, high-performing job. It's also quite stressful, mainly because of the culture that's usually implanted in these kind of companies, not necessarily because of the job is inherently stressful, but it means that you have to be super detail-oriented, you have to be super analytical, you have to use that mind, because if one thing goes wrong in the code, if one thing goes wrong in that job, then the whole system falls apart and then you get the blame, okay? Now, he's not able to design his mind. And before, because he wasn't able to make that distinction, or because a lot of the content that he was running into was a bit more simplistic, and there's a time and a place for that as well. Again, this is just my opinion. The problem with that is that he was getting involved in these negative loops. He was getting involved in these negative spirals because he was using his mind in such a forceful, pushing way because he thought that was the only way to get the work that he needed to be done, right? In a critical way, in a fast way, in an action-packed way. Now, when we started working together, what we were able to do is actually retrain how he interacts with his mind. His management style was completely different. His leadership is completely different. And from this, he was able to get all of the same stuff done, but actually training his mind to become softer, to get less stressed. When stress does come up, to get more resilient. So the main way that we did this is by implementing something called the never mind game. I get this from the lineage of Dharma Sukha or TWIM, where they teach tranquil wisdom, insight meditation. And the thing about meditation and software engineering is it's actually kind of similar in the sense that if you're not taught properly, you can just push your mind or you can push yourself so hard, and actually something that's supposed to be really good for you, like meditation, actually becomes something that's really bad for you because your mind gets really hard over a long period of time. An example of this is that you can get psychosis from meditation if you go too much. If you decrease sleep and you keep on meditating, there has been many cases of somebody having a legit psychiatric disease from it, because you can push your mind so hard if you do not have this framework that I'm about to give you. And don't worry, we're not just giving it in the meditational aspect, we're also expanding it to life in general. How we can use this and bring this meditation technique, this meditation technology to our day-to-day life so that we're using life and life experience and work as a way to get deeper into our own practice, okay? Whilst also making sure that we have good short-term results and good long-term results. So the never mind game is actually something from one of my big teachers, Sister Khanti Khema. It came originally from Dharma Sukha in the form of something called the 6 R's, and she simplified it into the never mind game, which I think is much, much more applicable. And it's something which is I teach to all of my clients, and like the case with Andrew, it makes the way they interact with themselves much, much better. Now, what I will say is to fuse this with the idea around having and cultivating unconditional love. I've got a video, I'm going to link it right now. With those two aspects, it's going to be extremely, extremely hard for you to not have a good internal workspace, and also for that internal workspace to not just build momentum, so that in 1, 2, 3 months, maybe even a year, maybe even 5 years, your relationship with yourself, your internal space is so fundamentally different than it is right now. And there's 5 stages of the never mind game. So I'll explain it in meditation first, and then we'll get into the nuts and bolts of it and how you can apply it to life. So in meditation, when we're meditating, the point of it is not to be on the object. The object is just to center the mind, right? You can think about centering the mind on, let's say there's work you have to do. If you're a founder, there's a ton of work you have to do. If you're maybe a more technical high performer, let's call it like that, there's certain tasks which you really need to get done and done to a good standard, because then you can put that into your portfolio in terms of, this is what I need to do to get a raise, to show that I am worth something to the company, or whatever it is, right? But your attention, unless you're a robot, is going to drift, right? So what we can do is we can visualize our attention drifting like this. The first stage is done automatically, and this is based on how good your mindfulness is in. This is how good, excuse me. This is how good your mindfulness is day to day. Okay. So what that means is how good your mindfulness is generally is going to dictate how fast you can catch yourself drifting. If that's a problem, then that's when I would actually recommend meditation as a technique, as a skill building exercise in order to develop that mindfulness. And the first step is done for you. It's realize. Okay. That's like the first R. Oh, wait, I'm supposed to be over here, but my attention's drifted this way. Cool. I realized that. Second one is you just release your attention. Like with everything, especially people like Andrew, like myself as well, you want to like overcomplicate everything. The detail is in the simplicity. It's in the doing. It's in the just allowing whatever's to come up and allowing yourself to fail. That's where the mastery is. So what release attention means in this spatial metaphor, which I'm doing right now, is we're over here. We realize, first step already done. Second, release. We release our attention from that thing. We come back to the object. In meditation, it's coming back to the object of whatever it is. I like to do metta meditation, which is loving kindness, the feeling of loving kindness. I just come back to the awareness there. For you doing a job, or for you doing whatever you need to do, it's coming back to the work at hand, right? Third one, what you're going to realize, and this is the most important part of it, this is the reason why I made this video, is the relax step. Almost all meditation techniques that I've seen, and I've done over 2,300 hours of meditation, okay, on the lower end. I have a video about that too, which you can look at on this channel if you're interested, is they never explicitly state that you have to relax your mind, ever. Like I've done Mahasi, I've done Hindu style noting, I've done Bhakti practices, I've done Vipassana, I've done your Anapana breathing, I've done so much of it, okay? They never explicitly say that there's a step where you relax your mind. Because what you'll find is when you're distracted by something, or even when you're working on something and maybe you're not distracted, there's like a tension that comes up in your mind, like around here. And it's almost like your mind is a muscle and it's contracted. So what you want to do is you want to visualize your mind as a muscle, and you want to uncontract it. You want to release it. If that's really difficult for you, the easiest thing that I have, which will help with that, is you tense your head or your mind, and then you relax it. That's the tension gone. This is the thing that's going to build pliability over time. Because it means when you're doing a task, not only are you not getting stressed by it, but you're actually actively relieving stress and tension. This is so, so important, because over time, becomes a habit. The more it becomes a habit, the more you have this state of being in a peaceful, relaxed mind. The more you're in that state of a peaceful, relaxed mind, the more you start to adopt the traits, behaviors, and personality of someone who has a peaceful, relaxed mind. And somebody who has a peaceful, relaxed mind is somebody who's very fundamentally different to somebody who's really stressed all of the time. And that's the concept of states into traits. You want to be in a certain state and then have those behaviors and habits and thoughts trickle down organically from the state, because then you're no longer overcompensating and you're actually unlocking your true self, rather than if you're just learning behaviors externally, it's fake it till you make it, but except you never make it, you're just faking it the whole time. The fourth step is re-smile. Okay, smiling is a big thing. Okay, it doesn't have to be like this. We don't want to overdo it, right? It can just be a small smile. Smiling. So an anecdote from me is I used to train Muay Thai semi-seriously, I guess you could say, when I was in year 8, year 9, year 10, and I've been training it really sporadically on and off since then. Jiu-jitsu was much more my main thing. I competed in that, national, international tournaments. I never did that for Muay Thai. I just had a couple of burner fights, right? But one of the things that one of the best amateurs in the UK actually at the time told me when he was teaching in the kids class was, you need to make sure, or if something really hurts, a little trick that you can do is you can smile. Because when you smile and you get, after you got your bell rung, or if you smile after you're hurt, it actually is an anchor for your mind to make you feel better. Now, I went and I looked this up. Basically, what it means is when you smile, it connects to your pineal gland, which releases endorphins. When endorphins gets released, it makes you feel a bit better, which is why if you watch high-level Muay Thai competitions, a lot of the time the guys, when they get hit or when they're trading or they're going into a war with somebody, there's like a smirk on their face a lot of the time, okay? We don't necessarily want to go into a smirk. You can if you want to. A smirk is a little bit like an arrogance thing, right? And arrogance will just kind of hurt you over the long term. In a fight, obviously, it's fine because you're kind of playing that game. You're getting into that ego state. You know, you really want to have a bit of arrogance, get into the other person's head. That's all good. We don't have to have any of that arrogance, right? But we can just have a genuine smile because it genuinely makes us feel better. So the thing that distracted us, we are now anchoring a different state from that thing that distracted us. So every distraction turns into state practice for us, okay? It turns into us actually being able to, piece by piece, change our behavior. This is behaviorism, right? One of the 7 forms of therapy. With behavior style therapies, they can be really powerful. They don't necessarily always go the deepest. For me, though, in a lot of my journey, like behavioral stuff like this was really the thing that I needed to really get going to the next level. Because what we're doing is we're using something which used to affect us so much and cause us stress, and the same negative inverse that it's given us, right? The same stress that it used to give us is now giving us that the same amount of energy, which is positive. So that we're actually using this as a way to change as a person. And it's not like we're becoming a totally new person. It's more like we're just unlocking closer and closer to our higher self, to our ideal self, right? And it's doing that by relaxation. So over time, our mind becomes more pliable, becomes less stress-free. From that environment, we get more creativity, inspiration, and motivation effortlessly. So we don't have to motivate ourselves through fear, stress, and guilt. We can motivate ourselves from inspiration. We're building the environment for that. And if we feel more of that as well, then we're in those states more often, and our personality starts to become more like that. So we're getting a massive change that way. And then from the re-smiling, we're making this practice more enjoyable and more fun. The problem with a lot of mindfulness practices is they're very dry. My practices were super dry, right? When I was doing mindfulness practices for Vipassana and Mahasi style noting meditation. Super dry, and over the long term, it makes you less likely to continue them because it's really boring and unstimulating, and also it makes your mind hurt. You know, a lot of the times after an hour or 2 hours of meditation, my mind would hurt more than it did when it went in, okay? And then number 5 is you return and you say never mind, right? That's where the never mind game comes in. Never mind is such a good word. This is why Sister Khema, you know, rest in peace, was such a good teacher, and she was just so passionate about teaching it. She was teaching it in more of a Dharma extent, but she was a businesswoman before this. You know, she lived her whole life, had a family. She was kind of like a no-nonsense type of character. She made it so practical for the everyday lay person, right? Lay person is just somebody who doesn't want to use any of this for spiritual attainment. Maybe you do, but we want to also make sure that we're crushing it in our life first, right? At least that's the kind of philosophy in this channel. The reason why it's so genius is because when I think of never mind, you're not saying, oh, it doesn't matter. When we come with a very dismissive energy, that energy that we're using to dismiss something usually just comes right back, you know? And there's also an air of arrogance there. And arrogance, you know, one of the big things that I'm working on right now, or I've been working on, is it just creates like a distance between you and that thing. It means that, oh, I'm above this thing, so I don't have to look at it. But the problem is when we don't look at something, it festers and it grows. So that when eventually we do have to look at it, it's much, much harder than if we just nipped it in the bud, so to speak, earlier. We say never mind because it's such like, oh, okay, never mind. It's a very gentle, easy return to the practice. Oh, like I had like this stressful thing and I just distracted myself. I said I wasn't going to procrastinate. And oh my God, I procrastinated and I hate myself and you should be better. You should stop doing this. And I need to hold myself to a higher standard of excellence, you know? Creates all this tension and this stress, okay? Comes from a good place. We can see the compassion where that comes from, right? Because we really do want to see ourselves do better. But just over a long time period, we're just beating our mind into submission. It's just not going to work. When you beat your mind into submission, your mind either becomes really dull and it doesn't really think for itself that much because every time it does, it just gets beat into submission, or it just gets really rebellious, self-sabotage, or it just becomes really sensitive, right? And when something becomes really sensitive, we become fragile. We're not anti-fragile anymore, we're just fragile. So it's just not good. So I'll go over those again. The 5 steps are realize, return, relax. Oh no, realize, excuse me. Realize, release, relax, re-smile, return, right? That's the never mind game there. And it's all with the energy of never mind. Oh, never mind, right? So how you can apply this to whatever you're going through and how we applied it to Andrew. First of all, Andrew got really, really into this kind of practice and he's doing really, really well. But the principle that he adopted here is I don't need to have negative reinforcement. I don't need to just pull my mind to do the thing because that takes energy and willpower, which I could just be using to just complete the damn project, to do the damn project. So instead, every time that he was working and he got distracted quite a lot, like checking emails, all that kind of stuff, he would use this to recenter. And the more times you do this, the more centered you just become. And the more these distractions don't become big distractions, they get less and less. It's like distractions used to be tsunamis. Like when you're working with somebody, or when let's take my own journey. Whenever I'd get thrown off, I get thrown off massively. And like every distraction was a big deal. The less you make those a big deal, the easier it is to just continue and get into flow state and continue to do work. Okay. So over time, what we're able to see with Andrew is he was getting less and less distracted, which is great. But the more time that he was on the work itself, the more enjoyable it was, the more creative it was, the more he could get into flow, the more he could produce results, right? So an example of my own story, I'll give you an example. There was one time when in the old company I was working with, I was the main editor, okay? And we just done like so many days, like 10, 12-hour days in a row, no breaks. Weekend didn't really exist. And we were building a school community and it was time to launch that school community. But we hadn't done the editing for like the video, right? Because my mentor at the time and also my boss had just filmed the VSL. VSL was a video sales letter, right? Which was going to tell people about the community and get them into the school community. Now I had to edit that with B-roll and everything after already having worked weeks on end, these 10, 12-hour days. And also this was at the end of the day too. Now, because of this, there's a bunch of other stuff that was happening here as well. My actual meditational foundational practice was really good. So I was able to bring up states of peace, tranquility, metta, compassion for myself very easily. So I was able to dictate how I felt emotionally. But I was also able to use this to, even when my mind was really distracted and really tired, I was able to just boom, bring it back to the task at hand. So that task was done in a few hours rather than maybe it would have taken me much, much longer. And also while I was doing that process, I didn't get thrown off at all. Like I was able to just boom, lock in because I was so used to having built this skill where procrastination can't arise. Because the more we procrastinate and the more we reinforce that negative reinforcement, the more likely it's actually to happen again, because your mind's going to rebel, right? And it wants to do something else. It doesn't want to be in this hard, stressful environment. But with this, I was able to eliminate it completely. So after this 10, 12-hour day, I think it might have even been more than that, I was able to do this work. And we were able to release it then, and we were able to make sure that business turned around, because up until then, it wasn't doing very well, but this was the turnaround point, okay? So what I'm trying to say is this is the hack which you can use in order to, as a new management operating system. It should be encouraged, or it should be done in the same in the same vein, not brain, the same vein as unconditional love, cultivating unconditional love for yourself, the unconditional loving witness, unconditional positive regard. But this is like the SOP, let's say, or the operating system that you should use in order to get your mind back on track, because it eliminates stress, it eliminates negative reinforcement, and it builds our behavior over time to be somebody who's less stressed and has more positive reinforcement and more creativity and more relaxation. So there you have it. I think that will be the end of this playlist. Basics, back to basics, but still very deep concepts. If you want to know more about this, I have my 2.5 3-hour live stream, which I did with my one-on-one clients, about my exact step-by-step system, about how you can actually overcome bad beliefs, storylines, and narratives. If this playlist was really interesting to you, then I can assure you that that is going to be really, really helpful for you. All it's going to cost is your email, and I'll see you on the next one.